He had the salary most people spend their whole lives chasing. Corner office on the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Cincinnati. Company car. A title. Vice President of Strategic Initiatives that made people at dinner parties nod slowly, the way people do when they're impressed, but don't want to show it too quickly. Nathan Briggs was 38 years old and had everything the plan said he should have. He handed it back on a Tuesday morning in March, not because it was broken, because he had looked out that 14th floor window one too many times and seen something sitting in the industrial sprawl below that nobody in any of those conference rooms was paying attention to. Something so ordinary that the entire industry had collectively decided it wasn't worth serious thought. He decided they were wrong. Maybe you know someone like Nathan. Or maybe you are Nathan, somewhere inside a career that looks exactly right from the outside and feels exactly stuck from the inside. This story is about what happens when someone stops climbing the ladder long enough to notice that the ground beneath it might be worth more than the ladder itself. Stay with me to the end. The decision Nathan made in that board meeting and what he saw through that window is the part that changes how you think about value and where it actually hides. And if stories like this are why you come here, consider subscribing. There is a new one every week. Drop in the comments where you are watching from. City, state, country. I read everyone. Nathan had spent 11 years inside corporate strategy. He was good at it. The kind of good that gets noticed, gets promoted, gets handed more responsibility every 18 months like clockwork. He understood how companies moved, where the inefficiencies were, which initiatives were real, and which were theater dressed up in PowerPoint slides. He also understood by year 9 that he was one of the slides. The breaking point arrived quietly, the way breaking points usually do. A board meeting in February. The agenda was a new digital platform initiative, something involving AI and customer engagement metrics, and a roadmap that stretched 5 years into a future nobody could actually predict. Around the table sat 12 people in expensive clothes talking about disruption. Nathan sat at the end and said the right things at the right times and wrote the right notes in the right places. And then he looked out the window. Below the glass building, Cincinnati spread out in all directions. Rail yards, industrial lots, construction sites with their raw earth exposed, red clay and dark topsoil turned up by machines, sitting in mounds under the gray February sky. Nobody in that room was looking at it. Nobody at that table had thought about it once. It was just the ground. Just dirt. The thing beneath everything that nobody with a strategy deck ever bothered to factor in. Nathan factored it in on the drive home. He had been reading about supply chains for years. It was his job to understand them. And what he kept coming back to, in research papers and industry reports and conversations with people who worked in construction and agriculture, was one quiet, persistent fact. The topsoil market was massive, essential, and almost entirely unmodernized. Billions of dollars moved through it every year through networks of middlemen and manual processes and legacy players who had been doing it the same way for decades. Nobody had brought technology to it. Nobody with resources and logistics experience had looked at it seriously. Most people who worked in corporate strategy looked at a gap like that and wrote a memo. Nathan looked at it and wrote a resignation letter. He told his wife, Claire, on a Sunday evening at the kitchen table in their house in Blue Ash. He showed her the numbers he had been running for 3 weeks. The market size, the margin structure, the supply chain inefficiencies he believed he could solve. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. She asked one question. How long before it pays anything real? He said honestly, 2 years minimum, probably 3. She looked at the pages. Then she looked at him. She nodded once, the slow, careful nod of someone who has built a life with a person they trust more than the plan itself. He handed in his notice the next morning. His colleagues reacted the way colleagues react when someone does something they cannot explain. A few were genuinely curious. Most were quietly convinced he had made a mistake he would regret within 6 months. His manager called it career suicide with a sympathetic voice. His father asked twice at Easter whether he had considered going back. Nathan had not considered it once. The first year was the kind of difficult that does not make good stories while you are inside it. He leased a small yard on the outskirts of Cincinnati, 2 acres, a portable office, a used screening machine he had bought at an equipment auction for $34,000. He hired 2 men who had spent their careers in the industry and knew things about soil composition and material grading that no strategy deck had ever taught him. He showed up every morning in steel-toed boots and learned. He screened material, he drove loads, he made calls. He lost 2 contracts in the first 4 months to competitors who had relationships he didn't have yet. He won 3 smaller ones because he could deliver faster and track everything digitally in a way none of them could. The first-year revenue was $340,000. The margin was thin. Every dollar went back into the operation. He had implemented something none of his competitors were doing. A digital logistics system he had built with a small software team, tracking soil composition, material origin, delivery scheduling, and customer specifications in a single platform. What had been a manual guesswork industry was becoming, inside his operation, a data problem he knew how to solve. He could tell a contractor exactly what organic content was in a load before it arrived. He could route 3 trucks more efficiently than a competitor could route 1. He could price more accurately because he understood the material better. The contractors noticed. Then, the developers noticed. Then, the municipal contracts started coming. By the end of year 2, Nathan had 12 employees and a second yard in Columbus. Revenue had crossed $2.1 million. He still drove a 6-year-old pickup truck. He still showed up before the site foreman most mornings. The people who had written him off as a suit had stopped writing him off. You earn that in the dirt industry not by talking, but by being present when it is cold, and the machines break, and the customer is calling because the load is late. He was always present. The vertical integration came in year 3. He had identified that the real margin loss in his operation was in transport. He was dependent on third-party haulers who set the pricing and the timeline. He bought a fleet. 6 trucks first, then 12. Then he bought the land he had been leasing. Then a processing facility that allowed him to take raw excavation waste from construction sites, material most contractors paid to dispose of, and turn it into screened, certified, sellable product. He was not just selling dirt. He was solving 2 problems at once. He was taking waste from one industry and turning it into premium material for another. The economics of that were not complicated. The execution was. By year 4, the business had crossed $18 million in revenue. By year 6, With 3 states and a growing municipal division focused on sustainable land reclamation, it crossed $90 million. The AI-driven soil mapping system he had built internally was now being licensed to other operators. The company he had started in a leased 2-acre yard outside Cincinnati was, by the time most of his former colleagues had received their 3rd promotion, operating in 7 states and processing more than 2 million tons of material annually. His father stopped asking about going back. The last time Nathan spoke publicly about the decision, a small industry conference in Columbus, not a TED stage, not a business school auditorium, someone in the audience asked him what the hardest part had been. He thought about it for a moment. He said the hardest part was the 18 months when the business was real enough to consume everything, but not yet big enough for anyone outside it to take seriously. When you are showing up every morning to something that looks, from the outside, like a very expensive mistake. He said the thing that kept him going was not confidence. It was a question he had asked himself the morning he resigned and had not stopped asking since. He had looked at the industrial sprawl below that 14th-floor window and asked himself, if this is worth billions to the people already in it, and nobody has modernized it, and I know how to modernize things, then what exactly am I waiting for? He never found a good answer to that question, so he stopped waiting. Here is what Nathan Briggs actually proved. Wealth does not always live where everyone is already looking. It lives in the place that is too unglamorous, too physical, too boring for the people with the resources and the knowledge to bother with it. The boardrooms are full of people chasing the next digital trend, while the ground beneath the building sits ignored and undervalued. Nathan looked down instead of forward. That one shift in direction was worth more than 11 years of looking the right way. Look at your own environment right now. Not at the industry everyone is excited about. At the one nobody is talking about. At the process that is still being done the way it was done 30 years ago. At the material or the service or the gap that is too ordinary for anyone with real resources to have touched yet. That is where the leverage is. That is where it has always been. What is your dirt? The unglamorous thing in your world that everyone around you is stepping over without stopping to look at it. Drop it in the comments. One word or one sentence. Let us see what people are sitting on without knowing it. If this story gave you something real to think about, subscribe. There is a new one every week. People who built something by seeing what everyone else had decided was not worth seeing. And if someone in your life is stuck inside a career that looks right from the outside and feels wrong from the inside, send this their way. That might be the most useful thing you do today.